Georgia. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. Here in Atlanta, it's a brisk winter day. I think we're going to get up to about 40, 45 today. We had some snow flurries in the mountains a couple of days ago, which is pretty unusual for Atlanta. But I want to say, glad you're all on this call. We're going to be talking about building resiliency in times of change, or the subtitle, How to Cope with Life When It Comes at You Fast. That was taken from one of the insurance commercials. A couple of housekeeping rules. This training is being recorded, and if you miss any of it, or if a colleague was not able to attend, it'll be on the One Interior, your intranet site, and just connect over to the EAP link, and you'll find this training recorded there. So that's the One Interior intranet site, and then connect over to the EAP link. Other housekeeping rules, we have the phones muted right now, and I'll be opening up the lines halfway through the training, and then at the end for your questions. You'll see that there is a chat box. If you send a question to all participants, I will try to respond to it as we're going along and definitely get to your question as best I can at the halfway point and then at the end. If you send me a question that says private, I will be glad to respond to your question at the very end of the training. If you have to take a call, please don't put us on hold, as when we open up the lines, we'll hear the music for your hold when you're on hold when we all come on, and we may or may not like the music. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said, I'm with your Employee Assistance Program. I'm one of the clinicians here in the Atlanta office, and your agency has asked us to do this training because we'd like to assist you in handling the current changes you're going through in a positive way, both at work and in your life. And we know that recent decisions over the last few months made by the government probably have directly affected your lives more than ever. We know that this fact is probably ever present on your mind, your bank account, your income, your amount of work you have to do, the work staff you work with. So hopefully this training is coming at a good time. When we constructively face changes in our life, we can call ourselves resilient. And resiliency is the ability to adapt or recover from a change or a misfortune, the ability to bounce back. I remember, if you remember growing up, you had a Super Ball. I'm probably showing my age, but it bounced and bounced and bounced and bounced. That's what we want to be able to do as we go through trials and tribulations through our lives. I'm sure all of us are interested in becoming stronger and more resilient. And as we go through the training, you may be familiar with some of the concepts explained, because a lot of the information comes from a book called Who Moved My Cheese, and that book is by Spencer Johnson. If you're interested in getting it, it's a short little paperback, very easy read, very good reference as a reminder to yourself of how to deal with change. So I would recommend it for you to get if you'd like to. So here are our objectives for the day. We're going to try to understand the nature of change, understand change management strategy. We're going to talk about learning resiliency techniques and adapt to change and challenges to maintain our motivation. And that key point at the end, when we feel that we are resilient and we can adapt to change, we are able to maintain our motivation versus feeling downtrodden by change and a victim or overwhelmed by change. In order to become more resilient, we do have to have a better understanding of how to manage change and understanding the nature of change. So hopefully by the end of this training, you'll have some more positive and appropriate options on how to approach change at work and in other parts of your life. Just as the title of the training said, the subtitle, sometimes we do really feel like life is coming at us way too fast and we don't have any time to prepare for a change. And sometimes in life that is very, very true. But we do have more control and flexibility in our responses than we realize. So when you are in a situation when you're dealing with a change, keep in mind that you may not have control of that change coming at you, but you do have control and choices of how you respond to that change. So let's get started on this journey and see how we can become a more resilient person. On screen, you see three questions. What kind of changes do we face at work? What kind of changes do we face in our lives? And what feelings does change bring up for us? If we were all sitting here in a room together, we'd have a lively discussion about these questions. So let's talk about the first question. Some of the answers that I might get to the first question of what kind of changes we're facing at work, I bet I might hear concerns about the furloughs, budgeting issues, you're dealing with increased work demands, less manpower, your work taking more time than expected, technology changes, and these can all be overwhelming. Second question, what kind of changes do we face in our life? I bet I might get some of these answers. I have a smartphone now. Technology is much easier for me to use. It's easier for me to stay connected with others. However, sometimes I think there's just too much to do, too many details to keep up with, too many choices, and time keeps moving too fast. I might hear that as some responses. So some of the changes in our lives have been for the better, and some of the changes we don't feel may have helped us yet, or we don't see the positive side of them yet. And I really like for you to focus on that word yet. If you're dealing with a change or a challenge that doesn't seem helpful to you, try to keep looking for, I don't see it yet, but I'm going to get there. And I'll talk about why I want you to focus on that in just a little bit. The final question, what feelings does change bring about for us? Why is change such a powerful word? Well, if we go back to our caveman ancestry, we always have been threatened by change, whether it's a tiger or a lion or something trying to eat us. We like things to stay the same. We like that homeostasis of things. Biologically, we really are creatures of habit. When we have to experience change, something changes in our surroundings, our work, our life, we experience that as a loss or a disruption. We feel safest when we're in established norms, when we know what to expect. When a change comes about, even if it's a change we want, we still don't quite know how it's going to turn out, and that's unsettling to us. Change really forces us to be adaptable when we might not be ready to do so. Let me say that one more time. Change really forces us to be adaptable when we might not be ready to do so. We want to have change on our own timetable, and unfortunately that's not always possible, and most of the time that's not possible at all. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with change, is that you are adaptable, it's just the timing of it is a little off. So right now I'd like for you just to take a second, and I'd like for you to think personally about a change that you have just gone through or are going through, whether it's at work or in your personal life, so that the rest of this training you can apply the techniques that we're going to discuss towards that training, towards that change. So take a couple seconds and jot it down on a piece of paper, a change I'm dealing with or a change I've just dealt with is, and give it a name. I'm going to be quiet for just a few seconds to give you a chance to write that down. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to write down a change that you'd like to address. Keep this change in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation. And again, the chat box is open. If you have questions that you address to all of us, I'll be glad to respond. If they're privately, I'll be glad to respond at the very end. So as I mentioned, some of this material is from a book called Who Moved My Cheese. And in the book, there are 4 roles or responses that are very common that we adapt when we are dealing with change, or we play out when we're faced with change. And those roles are, you see 2 of them on the screen, the investigator, the opportunist, the resistor, and the adapter. We'll talk about the other 2 in just a second. Again, as I go through this, think of the change you're dealing with and see where you are in which role you're playing out. And keep in mind that these roles are real flexible, that today is Thursday, you may be in one role today, and by Monday you may be in a different role. It's not a static linear process. It can be a ebb and flow between the roles, and that's normal as we adapt to change. The investigator. This is the person who's basically neutral about a change. They may need more information, more data, or they need to may need to talk to others to get more information, more answers before deciding if the change is going to be positive or negative. This is the person who might say in conversation, well, the verdict's not out if this is going to be a good thing or bad thing. They're just pretty neutral, but they do need more information. So if you're an investigator, your role right now is to get more information to feel more comfortable with the change you're dealing with. The opportunist. This is the person who's very positive about the change, and he's optimistic that things will not only work out better in days ahead, but he or she will advance from the change. Things will be better for them. This is the person who might say, I'm looking forward to this change. It's going to make my job easier. I know there'll be a learning curve, but I'm so tired of the old way. It was so cumbersome. This way is going to be great. I'll have more time to get more things done. Okay. So hopefully you've got some opportunists in you, and you can see that in some of the changes you're dealing with. The next role is the resistor. This is the person who feels quite negative, doesn't like change at all, and we've all been there. This person's reaction might be, why now? Why can't it stay the same? I don't like this one bit. The old way was working just fine. This is the person who's going to have the hardest time to deal with the change because of their anger and resistance. This person may be too close to look at any of the positives of the change that's coming forth towards them. So if you're in the resistor role right now, know that you have a choice to move out of that role, and you're maybe making it a little bit harder on yourself by being resistant. If there's one piece of the change that you can glimmer some positive aspect from, I would encourage you to look at that. Finally, the adapter. This person is like the opportunist, that they're very positive, not only for themselves, but for the team or for their family or for the organization they're part of. They want others to get on board with the change. They actually like change, and they venture the unknown and the new possibilities. This is the person who might be, quote unquote, the cheerleader of the group, who really rallies people together to say, come on guys, let's give this a chance. We can do this. We can make it through. We'll get to the other side, and we'll wonder how we did our work the old way when the new way is much easier. So we want the best roles to get to are the adapter and the opportunist. And that person's going to be much more resilient in dealing with change than someone who stays in the resistor role or even in the investigator role. You might think, well, an investigator role is not bad, but they're on the fence. They're always wanting more and more information to feel like they can take that leap forward to move towards the change. So at some point, we may or may not get all the answers, but we have to take that leap of faith and say, this is going to work out. I'm going to give it my best shot. So with these roles explained, take a moment again to think about what role you want to take on or are taking on in your real work-life changes or in your own life changes, that you do have a choice in how you face change. As you might guess, it's very important that our work life, along with other parts in our life, that we work towards being an adapter of change and the opportunist person. If we think of ourselves as adapters, we're going to aim towards this. We'll have more of a chance of acting in a positive way for ourselves and for others around us. And as an opportunist, we may even grow and benefit from the change in the experience. And this may seem like a different point of view or a different angle to come from for many of you listening. But I want you to hear that these roles are optional to you. You can pick and choose which role you want to be in. The change, when it comes your way, may not be optional, but we do have a choice in how we respond. So if we were back in our room together, I bet a couple of you may be shaking your head and saying, yeah, but you don't know what the changes I'm going through. There's nothing positive about it. And I've been there with you. So what do we do when changes come at us in our life, home, work, that aren't in our best interest? Perhaps getting paid less, trying to make your pay all your bills with less money, trying to service more people with less manpower, trying to be able to offer the quality of work of services that you'd like to, but you don't have the resources to do so. All of these are very, very frustrating changes. And the other one I didn't mention yet is, what if you have a new manager because your manager was downsized or left the agency and you don't know how to interact with that manager, not sure you're on the same page with them. These are tough changes. And yes, it is normal to struggle with these changes that we initially feel very uncomfortable. They make us feel very uncomfortable. But if we stay in the adapter frame of mind, where we can adapt and become resilient and see the benefits of a change, even if it's just one little piece, that will help move us forward. We want to look at change in a healthy way and not fighting it. So try to keep in mind your goals when you're looking at changes at your workplace in your life. What are your goals, and how, even with the change, can you still reach your goals? If you keep your focus on what your goals are and what you want to accomplish versus feeling a victim of change, this is going to serve you in the long run and, again, help keep you motivated. So it really boils down to what this screen says, that there really are only two possible outcomes: to become a change victim or a change master. And we've done this training. This is the third time we've offered this training this quarter, and I had privy to some of the comments from the other one, and one of the comments that I liked, I wanted to read to you, is that one lady said, or one person said, I seem to float between two outcomes. How does one master becoming a master more consistently? And I think being very aware that you do float between being a victim and a master, and your goal is to become a change master more often, will get you to become a change master quicker, or your intention is going to be there because you're focused on that. What our attention is towards is what we give energy towards. If your intention is toward being resistant, then your energy goes towards being resistant. If you're trying to adapt to a change, you're giving energy towards that. So let's break this down just a little bit more. If there were a written contract between employers and employers instead of assumed one, the fine print would read, change is inevitable. We know that. It's in our life. The old saying, nothing change is inevitable, just like death and taxes. It's always going to come our way. And life, real life, is a succession of changes, and there's no way to prevent change from occurring. As a change victim, you are one who's unprepared. You may be overwhelmed, and you may feel victimized by the change. Change victims rarely get ahead, and they often fall behind. This person really doesn't have a very good idea of where they're going and what they want to achieve. They don't have a good idea of what their goals are, short-term or long-term. Or they're so focused on their long-term goals that they're not paying attention to immediate short-term goals. So if you feel like you have some part of being a change victim, and you don't have your goals, take some time, even if they're short-term goals, to establish them. What do you want to achieve at work, in your personal life, in your family life, in your relationship, and work towards them. That'll get you out of being a change victim. The change master, on the other hand, this is the person who recognizes, prepares for, and takes advantage of opportunities and tries to master their change. He keeps his eyes on the goals he wants to achieve and is ready to change those goals as needed, as circumstances allow him to, and as it's necessary, because he wants to keep moving forward. When we're dealing with times of uncertainty and we don't know the long-term outcome of something, we may have to deal with the short-term outcome. Let me give you an example of that. If someone is faced with a serious illness, they may not know the long-term outcome of that illness. There's too many variables that will determine whether they overcome the illness or succumb to it. But a way someone manages this, the best way to, is to focus on the short-term goals, what they can control now. Each step along that pathway of getting information, staying healthy, and staying positive is going to be the short-term goal, even though they don't know the long-term goal. If you're wanting to, I'll give you my own personal goal right now. One day I want to go take a trip around the world, and I'm going to do it with frequent flyer miles. So my short-term goal is to keep building up as many frequent flyer miles as I possibly can, and I have a travel budget set aside. Do I know when I'm going to have enough miles? Nope. Do I know when I'm going to have enough money to get around the world? Not yet, but that's a goal, and every time I make an expenditure, I go, okay, do I need this, or do I want to put some of that money towards my trip around the world? So that's a short-term goal towards a long-term goal that I'm not sure when I'm going to get there, but it is a goal. So take a look at your focus again. Are you a change master or change victim? Do you know what your short-term and long-term goals are? I'm reiterating this to give you some time to think about this. Some other examples of short-term goals might be reducing your spending each week by 5% and see what extraneous expenditures you can cut out. Do you really need that coffee from Starbucks, or can you bring a coffee from home, or find a place where it's less expensive coffee? Short-term goals might look like finishing a project or meeting a deadline at work. Long-term goals, those might include how to position yourself or your family for retirement, even in times of uncertainty. You, again, might not know when you're going to retire, but you're working towards retirement. It may include extending your work career by a year or two to make up for lost income due to the budget cuts, or if you've suffered a loss in the stock market. Long-term work goals might look like training for something that you need to, some skills you need to acquire, and you may need to get that training inside work or outside work. Where are you going to get that training so you can advance in your career? Long-term family goals. Again, this might be preparing all the documents you need to have in place, like a will, advance directive, and a power of attorney, so that everyone knows your wishes. The latest statistic I heard was about 50% of people in the United States die without a will, and it makes life much more difficult for those they leave behind. You can become a change master or a master of change and cope with possibilities of stress due to the changes that occur in work and life. So this is an option. You can work towards this. We're going to look next at some techniques that are not only going to help you adapt and survive change, but help you grow through it, thrive through it, and take advantages of opportunities that always come with change. It just all depends on how you want to look at it. All right. We're going to look next at mastering the 4 C's. And these are change management strategies. As I mentioned before, there are people out there, maybe you, maybe me, maybe all of us, part of all of us, that thrive on change. There might be some areas in your life that you look forward to it changing. Think about that for a second. We're not black and white. Like I mentioned, I hope to travel around the world. And when I travel, I look forward to the change and adventure. I don't want a structure. I want to see what kind of comes my way. So I'm an open book to adventure. In my work life, obviously, I don't want everything to be unprepared for things. I want to be prepared for things, and I like some structure. So there may be parts in your life that you really do embrace change. Remind yourself of that. So those hardy individuals that do thrive on change remain healthy and productive during times of high stress. And these are our change masters that we talked about. And there's been years and years of study and observation done, and they found that these change masters have 4 distinct characteristics, which we are going to call the 4 C's, and they're listed on the screen: commitment, challenge, connection, control. And we'll go through each of these. A change master demonstrates commitment to growth and to their careers, their self-growth, their family growth, their life growth, and to their careers. They have a sense of meaning and purpose to what they do. They look for that, and they are committed to change and growth in their life. So there's a bigger picture for them. It's not just one task after another task. They put all the pieces together, and what are they accomplished? What are they working towards? They also see change as a challenge versus a setback or an obstacle, and they see it as an opportunity. They are energized by change. Change masters are energized by change, and they take on jobs that stretch their abilities. Key word here, it may just be semantics, but looking at change as an opportunity and not an obstacle. Thirdly, they seek support from others and feel a sense of connection. Change masters very rarely work in isolation. They work with people, with a team, with a community. They try to learn as much as they can from those around them. Seeing others who have adapted, they take on those qualities and characteristics. And they like to help others. That sounds like our adapter role. Finally, they focus their energy on what they can control. They give their attention to that. They try not to get frustrated about what they can't control and they can't do, and they are constantly looking for new ways to accomplish their goals. This is the change master. What can I control right now? What do I have enough information to move forward on? What don't I have control over that I need to just sit aside and let go? So I'm going to ask you to take a second or two and go back to that piece of paper that you wrote down your change and look at these 4 C's: commitment, challenge, connection, and control. Identify for yourself right now which of these characteristics you possess and which skills do you need to develop. So I'm going to let the line be quiet for a second while you write that down. Okay. I hope you were able to identify the characteristics and the C's that you do have right now and which ones you want to work on for the challenge or the change you're dealing with in your life. On this next screen, we have an old saying, but it's a very appropriate saying when we're looking at change. When a door closes, another one opens. But often we stand there so long looking at the closed door that we don't see the one that's open. This is so true. If we don't look towards the future of how to adapt to change and we're only looking backwards, how can we move forward? In order to become a change master, we have to have that momentum and that motivation to keep moving forward. If you are a change master, you will look forward. At this time, I want to go ahead and open the lines and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, the lines are all open, and please keep in mind that this is being recorded, so if I don't understand what your question is, I will repeat it again for the recording. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah. What for lunch?
Okay. Okay, Rebecca, let's go ahead and close the lines again.
Okay, they're muted.
Okay. Guys, I was hoping that I would be able to hear you clearly, but I think we're using some new technology that it's making it a little difficult to hear one voice at a time. So I'm going to just ask that if you do have a question right now that you want me to respond to, that you send it to the chat and send it to all participants. And I'll wait just a second to see if any questions come up there. And then I'll respond to them, and I'll do it that way. So if you do have a question from the material we've talked about thus far, feel free to send it to the chat, and I'll respond to your question. You can send me a private question. I'll respond to that at the end of the training. Okay, I just saw a note that we're not able to send to all participants, so you can just send it to me directly as the host, to Laura Rifkin, and I'll respond to your question. Okay, I have a question from Keith that says, forward, backward in terms of change seem very linear and Western perspective. Are there others you could speak of, other ways you could speak of? Okay. I think we're talking in linear terms because we look at time at linear, that there was before a change and after a change, and how do you get from point A to point B. Obviously, change isn't a linear perspective. That's what I mentioned to you before, that you're going to bounce between those roles. You're going to bounce between being a victim and a master. So it's not one day that you just make the move from being a victim to a master. It's going to continuously be a process. So I think that if you can keep in mind that you're focused on that process, that you don't want to be in the victim role or you don't want to be resistant to a change, and you're trying to find some way to adapt or look for an opportunity to change, that in itself will propel you forward. Okay. Okay. I think all the other questions right now are, I'm going to answer this one question I think is a good general question of how to deal with colleagues who are resistive. So if you're working with a colleague who you're dealing with change and they tend to be in that resistive role, you may need to just acknowledge how you're feeling about things and accept their feelings. If you can spend less time around them and not give in to their energy, that's a good thing. But you can acknowledge your feelings and say that you're looking forward to it, and that you may have been resistant at one point, but it wasn't serving you any good to be resistant and want to move forward with the change. It'll be up to them to make that change. It is difficult to be around a resistant person. And I'm just looking at one more question before we move on. Let's see. The final question is for managers. I don't know if we have any managers on the line, so I'm going to address this one. What techniques do you recommend managers utilize when you have staff who are very much resistors? As a manager, you're going to have a little bit more clout power versus a colleague to colleague. You can address that person from a perspective of what is expected of them for their job and their skills, and how that a negative morale is affecting the group, and that it's all difficult for everyone to adapt to a change, but that you're needing them as a team member to be on board with the change, and if they have any issues with the changes coming forward, to share them with you as a manager, and to remember that there is a morale around the whole group, and how their resistiveness, negative attitude, if you want to call it that, could affect others, and what is expected of them as a team member. So as a manager, I think you have a little bit more clout. Okay, I'm going to keep hold of these questions, and I'll get to the rest of them at the very end. I think some of them are private, so I will respond to them at the end. So if you did send me a question, even after the presentation ends, go ahead and stay on the line, and I'll respond to your question. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Thank you for your questions and comments. All right, we're going to move a little bit from just dealing with work changes to life changes now. And we can kind of break changes into 3 different categories: expected life changes, unexpected, and the planned changes. Expected changes are those that we can expect to happen as we get older as human beings. What might some of these be? Well, let's see. Hopefully we finished high school. Hopefully we had the opportunity to go to college, or we finished college. If we chose to get married, we met a mate to marry and knew when we were going to get married. If we chose to have children, we could plan to have children. We have a time frame for changes. That's the key word for expected changes. There's a time frame for them that generally happens for us in our lives, and we can plan for them for a certain degree. If you're planning on moving, you start looking for a house, you know what your budget is, you plan the movers, etc. If you're planning to graduate high school, you know when your graduation date is, or perhaps your child is going to graduate high school, you plan for that and start preparing for the next part of their life. If you're looking for, if you've changed jobs in the past, you made a plan to look for a job, put your resume out there, and move forward. However, sometimes expected changes turn into unplanned, unexpected changes because they don't happen in the time frame that we expect. Perhaps we started college, but we didn't get to graduate, or it took us 5 or 6 years because of finances or other life circumstances instead of 4. Perhaps we got married, but that person didn't turn out to be the person we should have married, and we got divorced. I don't think many people go into a marriage thinking they're going to get divorced, so that was unexpected. Or perhaps we lost a loved one, a friend, a spouse, a family member to an accident or a sudden illness, and we didn't have time to prepare. Those are those changes that hit us fast, and we don't have that time, and they can be devastating. Our world as we knew it suddenly changed in a blink of an eye. These types of changes are much more taxing on us, and we have to be resilient and have that wherewithal to move past them. So we've got the expected changes, the one we can prepare for, the unexpected ones that are just thrown at us anywhere from as simple as losing your keys, that you're late for work, to an accident, to the seriousness of a loss of a loved one. We just don't expect that's going to happen, to the ones that we plan for. And the plan changes are those that we take charge of, whether it's going back to school, whether it's starting an exercise program, whether it's planning a trip around the world. We put that in motion, and we have charge of that change. And we feel good about that because we're making a decision to embrace whatever it is we want to attain. However, even with the plan changes, we can feel unsteady because even by moving forward with a change, we don't know what's on the other side. We don't know how it's going to look. And that process in itself, while we're in the midst of change, is unknown arena. So even the plan changes, we may feel a little bit kind of like on a three-legged stool is how I always say. It's not quite balanced, but embrace it. So we're going to move on to when we deal with change, we're going to deal with stress. They're interchangeable because if we feel unsteady and uncertain of the future or how it's going to turn out, even if it's something we plan for, that can cause stress in our life. And again, if we were back in the room together and I had a whiteboard up, I'd ask everybody to write down, how do you deal with change? How do you deal with stress? And I bet we would have this long, long list with great ideas on it. We have to take care of ourselves in order to deal with change and the stress that's associated with it. We know it's important to eat healthy, to exercise, to take mental breaks for ourselves. And that list might contain, you might deal with stress by doing sports, by running, by reading, by listening to music, by watching movies, by playing with your kids, meditation, prayer, journaling, talking to others. It goes on and on and on. But the key to managing stress and being able to deal with change is coming up with a list that works for you and that serves you well. Obviously, if on this list using alcohol excessively was a way you managed your stress, that is a way that people manage their stress, but it's not going to help them to move forward, and you're going to could create other problems by doing that. So finding what works for you and ways that you will use consistently is the way that you'll manage your stress and be able to deal with change. So it is an individual effort. So again, take just a second right now and write yourself a short list of the things and activities and ways that you manage stress when you're dealing with change. Write that list out real quick. Whatever comes to mind very quickly, that's how you deal with your stress. And then put a plus or minus by it. If it's helpful, great. If it's not helpful, then that may be something you might want to change. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay. As I was thinking in my head of my own list, one of my stress relievers that came up for me, and at this time of year might be a common stress reliever for other people as we face a society where many of us are overweight, is that sometimes I tend to go to my comfort foods when I'm stressed out. And I had to put a negative by my little list because while that might feel like a, quote, comfort at the time, in the long run, I have yet another problem to deal with. So if that's one of yours, I hope you'll address it this year and look for resources of ways to eat healthier, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Right. Okay. So we're going to talk next about breaking it down a little bit further to become a change master. And we're going to talk about building resiliency and changing our perspective. And we're about halfway through the training, so we're going to end probably about 5 after 10 here. In order to take care of ourselves as we adapt to change, we really do have to build resiliency to be as healthy as we can. We all know how we feel when we're walking around with a head cold. Just not quite all there. We have to also examine how we look at things, how we think about things change, and how we feel about a change. Let me say that again. How we look at a change, how we think about a change, and how we feel about a change. Those 3 parts of the equation is going to predict how the outcome of the change is for us. So we may have to change our perception when we're dealing with the change so that we can get a better outcome. One of the best ways to deal with a change that you're dealing with or anticipating facing is go into the future. This is still linear, as that person brought up before after the change, but I'd like for you just to do a real quick exercise in your head and imagine something that how your life would look, say, 3 to 6 months down from the road from now, that you've mastered the change, that you've adapted to it. Picture how your life would be. And that picture in the future can help you move towards that when you're struggling through the change. When people have gone through a divorce, picturing their life 3, 6, 9 months down the road and where they've gotten to from just getting divorced to moving on is a very helpful technique. So it can be used for any change. So let's take a look at how we build resiliency in our perceptions and a little bit more. And as I go through each of these sections, take a second to write down and jot a note for yourself if this is an area that you need to address and pay attention to. Again, resiliency is one's capacity to cope with stress or catastrophe. Resiliency is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, and tragedy, threats, or even any other kind of significant source of stress, such as family or relationship issue, serious health problems, a workplace issue, or financial stresses. It's that bouncing back, just like the Super ball that we talked about, from difficult experiences. And you might think, well, only those superstars or very extraordinary people are resilient. But I want to remind you of something that just happened not too long ago where many, many resilient and ordinary people came forward. It's almost been a year now, well, I guess 8 months, that back in April 2013 up in Boston, they had the marathon and the bombing, and many people who were just on the sidelines came forward and helped those who got injured. They just moved. They just took action. These are ordinary people that in the face of all the danger, without a second thought, helped those that needed it. So what I'm trying to say is that resiliency, we all have resiliency in us, and it can be built upon and developed. Is there emotional pain and sadness that comes with being resilient? Yes. When we've suffered traumas in our life or sadness or losses, there's going to be that pain. But the more resilient we are, the more we're able to move through that pain and move beyond. I think that's one of the wonderful things about being a human being, is that we never know how resilient we are, and we do have it within us. All of us do. So let's talk about how we do build resiliency. There's no magic formula here. It's more about taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, connecting with others. On this screen, you'll see lots of different ways that we need to take care of ourselves physically. Can we do them all every day? No, that's not realistic. But we should try to take care of ourselves as best we can almost every day, including healthy eating. I mentioned that just a minute ago, is that if one of your stress management techniques is to overeat with those quote-unquote comfort foods, and we all know what they are, and they're not broccoli and green beans. They're more like macaroni and ice cream. Look at that and look at the result after you've eaten that comfort food. Did you really feel comfort or just an avoidance of the stress? There's lots of great resources out there of how to eat healthy, from some good magazines to websites. Just try to stay away from bad diets and look at basic healthy eating healthy food. Regular exercise. Counsel on Exercise says that we all need at least 30 minutes of exercise 5 to 6 days a week. That's to maintain our weight. If you're trying to lose weight, you have to up that. Let's talk a little bit about regular relaxation techniques. These do not have to be complicated. There was a movie that came out a long time ago called Broadcast News with Holly Hunter, and one of the things I remembered about that was that she would set a time of day as a way to kind of, I don't know if it was relaxing, but she cried every day. I'm not saying that that's a relaxation way, but she was so controlled that she had to have a release every day. If your days are really stressful, look forward to a time of the day when you relax. It could be just turning your cell phone off. It could be turning everything off and just sitting and being quiet, no noise. It could be meditating. If meditating sounds overwhelming, just close your eyes for 5 minutes and imagine all of your worries going off on a log to sea. Just quiet your mind. It could be using techniques such as relaxation technique where you tense up a muscle and let it relax. Or it could be deep breathing, taking 4 deep breaths in and 4 out, and just acknowledge to yourself that this is your time to relax. I mentioned already about avoiding substances and alcohol. We all know the dangers of alcohol and drugs, that they add more problems to our lives than being used as a stress technique, and they break down our body. Alcohol is a poison added to our body. Adequate sleep and regular screenings, those are in there because there's lots and lots of studies that have been done when we don't get enough sleep and good sleep, that we can't face the challenges in our life as we need to. So if you're not getting good sleep or enough sleep, you may need to make that a priority. You may need to go to sleep with your house not as clean as you want it to be, but at least you're getting good sleep. And if you're not getting good sleep, you may want to talk to someone to address that. And then finally, regular screenings. If we're not doing the preventative things to make sure that our body is aging as it should and nothing is brewing, so to speak, those regular screenings prevent that and give us warning signs. So I hope that you are all taking advantage of regular screenings that are available to all of us, most of us, and most are now paid by insurance. So that's a good thing. Okay. I just talked about physically, but mentally this is just as important as your physical resiliency. Positive self-talk, having a sense of humor, being clear about your values, goals, and priorities, being assertive, learning how to stand up for yourself and say what you need, improving your communication skills, and taking time for mental health. Again, that's that centering. Look at all these things and see which ones is your weak link. Perhaps your talk to yourself is not really positive. Maybe it's critical. Maybe it's negative. If you, we don't have tape recorders anymore, but if you had a tape recorder, what would it sound like? Okay. Would you say any of those things to your friends that you say to yourself? I can't stress enough how a sense of humor and laughing it builds us up mentally. There's a website, A Joke a Day, the cartoons, just laughing at anything to giggle is a great relief and helps us mentally to look at some of the absurdities in life and just laugh. So take time to look at this list and see which one you need to work on for yourself. Building resiliency socially. Human beings are not meant to be loners. We're meant to be around other people. But if you look at this list of building and maintaining support systems, it says our spouse, children, parents, family, but then it also talks about community and pets. It could be activities. Those things that we build connections to build us up and build our resiliency. An exercise program, volunteering, activities with your church. It doesn't always have to be with people, but it has to be part of a bigger something. That is a way we build resiliency. In order to connect with people and maintain our relationships, obviously we do have to have clear communication. Others can't do mind reading of our thoughts and what we need very well if we're not speaking clearly. So the more that we're able to express our thoughts honestly and openly to someone and ask for our needs to be met, sometimes they will be met, sometimes they won't, but we're asking, then we have a chance of clear communication. And finally, intimacy. That's beyond that chitter-chatter. That's entrusting someone with your feelings and your connectedness to them. We do need that in our lives. And it takes a lot of time and effort, but obviously it's well worth it. Finally, a couple more ways that we build resiliency is spiritually. And this is private for most of us, but this is our humanness connecting to that private part of us. And it can be connecting with nature. It can be connecting with a religion. It can be connecting with a God or a spirit. Whatever is appropriate for you and makes sense to you and brings you peace of mind is an appropriate sense of spirituality. If you believe in religion, worship can include a variety of rituals. That could be gathering with other people to worship in a church, and this can be a great source of strength and encouragement. Again, just having that sense that you're connected to nature, to a God, a spiritual source, whatever brings you comfort is important to us as human beings. I think the most important thing, though, is a commitment to being true to yourself and your values and your beliefs. And if you have that you know you're being true to yourself and what you believe in, then you're going to build your own resiliency. Okay. The last piece of this is how do we change our perspectives? It kind of brings us back full center to the very beginning. If we have that negative talk and our expectations of dealing with change and stress are unrealistic, then we are staying in that victim mode versus being a change master. So if any of these comments on the screen sound familiar, I should be used to this change by now. Why couldn't things stay the same? Why can't I get it right the first time when it's a new thing? Listen to that and try to be kinder to yourself and say, this is a process. I'm going to get through it. I want to adapt to this change. I want to be an opportunist to this change, and I want to work with the change being resisted. That ties right in with building our self-esteem. If you see yourself as an adaptable person, a resilient person versus a victim versus quote-unquote, I can't do anything right kind of person, the former type, being adaptable and knowing that you can make changes and adapt and move forward is going to get you much further and much easier through life than being so hard on yourself. The last one I wanted to point out just for a second is redefining a situation in a less stress-provoking way. And I want to give you a visual on this one. If you're dealing with a challenge right now, put a picture frame around it. Put that challenge in the middle of that picture frame and see how that frame fits. It might be an antique wood frame. It might be a whitewashed, kind of rustic-looking frame. And if your sense of this change isn't motivating you to move forward, I literally want you to change the frame. And I'm doing this metaphorically, but by changing the frame around the challenge you're facing and the change you're facing, hopefully you'll have a new perspective on it. So that's what we mean by looking at a situation in a less stress-provoking way. Change your frame of reference on the challenge. And if you need to literally, figuratively, metaphorically put a different frame around that challenge, I hope that little trick will help you. I'm going to open up the lines in just a second, but the closing thoughts that we have today from this about challenges, dealing with change, becoming more resilient, is that just what it says, change is a human condition, and we do face changes every single day. And I like what the Buddha says, happiness becomes possible when one recognizes that the only permanent thing in life is change. So you do have a choice to become a change master in your life. And I hope some of these thoughts that we went through today and these techniques were helpful to you. If you responded to me privately, I'm going to go ahead and try to respond to your questions here at the very end of the training. So I'm not going to open up the lines, but if you do have any other comments you'd like me to address to the group, please go ahead and add them now while I'm finishing up. If you're not familiar with the Employee Assistance Program, we're a confidential resource to help you as employees with lots of different issues, any type of personal issue or work situation you may be dealing with, and help you cope during times of change and help you build your own resiliency. So the EAP would be a great resource for you to take advantage of. It is confidential counseling. No one knows that you've used us, and you can contact us several ways by calling us 24 hours a day at the 800 number or going to our website, and you just need one password, and it's a very simple one. It's Interior EAP. Put that in and request services. You do get up to 6 sessions of counseling free of charge per issue, and this is available for you and your family members. So I hope that you will take advantage of some of the techniques we talked about today, and feel free to contact us if you need some help with dealing with change, becoming more resilient, or any other issue in your life. Feel free to always touch base with the EAP. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of this training will be online at your intranet at One Interior, and then go to the EAP link to share it with other people or listen to it again. There was one question: is there a certificate for this training available? No, there's not a certificate, but know that you have done it and attended, so thank you. The last question is, are the slides available and this is going to be repeated, or is there a link to the presentation? As I mentioned, this presentation will be on your intranet, One Interior, and go to the EAP link. Okay, I think we've run over just a little bit. For those people who have sent me private questions, I'm going to try to respond to you now, so please stay on the line. And for the rest of you, please have a great day. Thank you for attending.